Back when it came out in 2012, I played the game Star Wars X-Wing, and I enjoyed it pretty much. It is a nice and economic miniature game about dogfight, tactical combat between Star Wars themed vehicle and starships, and I like the fact that it's a miniature game. It is played in continuous space, not on a modular board. There are templates and maneuver dials that allow you to resolve combat and create auto nuances in a simple way. So I really liked the system. As for the theme, I found it engaging, but as I recently said in my review for Star Wars Imperial Assault, Star Wars is a theme that I enjoy, but I'm not particularly crazy about it. I'm not a huge fan of the movies. I'm a person who can appreciate them, but I don't get excited about the game just because of that theme. On the other hand, I am really a big fan of fantasy in all of its forms, including gaming, and I do get excited when there are fantasy games out there. So just like I ended up trading my copy of Star Wars Imperial Assault for some expansions of the fantasy game Descent, I remember that back in the day I traded away my X-Wing, my Star Wars X-Wing, for, I don't know if it was for fantasy, but I didn't feel too attached to it. But recently I learned that there was a new implementation of the system that had dragons in it. Dragons, that's cool stuff for me. Dragons, elves, monsters, creatures. So that system, which I enjoy very much, tailored to a theme that I'm very excited about, is something that really made me extremely excited. Actually, I know that the game has been around for a while. I don't know why it took me so long to actually finally decide to give it a try. But try it I did. In this review, I'm going to cover the core set of the D&D Attack Wing game. So this is the founding set that you need to play the game, the one with the rules, with the moving templates, the dice, etc, etc. Then if you like the game, you can expand it and include more expansions. But in this video, I'll concentrate exclusively on what you find in this set, which is enough to start playing the game, precisely because you have, again, all of the necessary things like tokens, dice, rulers, and the rules. And you have 3 miniatures. You only have 3 miniatures, which means you only have 3 combat units, but each such unit is a dragon. Let me show how the game works. Each unit in the game is represented by a model that goes on the board or on the table, and a card with the stats of the creature. Here you have the cost in Legion points. If you're building your own army, then you receive a certain number of Legion points and you spend them to purchase units and upgrades. In this banner, it tells you the number and type of upgrades that you can use. Upgrades are cards such as this one, which you also purchase and you attach to your character to give them special abilities, special attacks, special defenses, all sort of things that you can do to customize your characters. And some such upgrades may have restrictions which are pretty general, like must be an evil creature or must be a good creature. This one is very specific, must be a copper dragon. Here you have the attack value with the primary weapon of the creature. You use this value when you're attacking. Here you have the agility, the value that you use to try to avoid being hit by an opponent. Life points, yes, you got that. When it goes down to 0, the creature is unable to continue the fight, so the creature is dead. Armor point, there's a value that you use when defending. The creature may have special abilities and traits described in this area of the card. At the bottom, there is a list of actions that the creature can perform after moving. This creature, for example, can dodge, feint, target, or concentrate. You can choose whichever of the available actions at the end of each movement each turn. And here you have the range and arc of attack. Creatures may have a forward range and or a rear range of attack. This creature, for example, has 2 such ranges and 2 such arcs of attacks. The number within the arc of attack indicates the range. So this creature can bite with a primary attack of 3, forward at range 2, and can attack with the tail at range 2, still using the primary weapon attack. Creatures usually come in 2 versions. That is, you have a miniature that you purchase, either you get it with the core set or you purchase it as an expansion. And then each such creature has multiple cards, so that the miniature can be used to represent different characters depending on the card that you use. Each creature also has a maneuver card that lists all the possible maneuvers that the creature can perform when moving. In this core set you will find 3 creatures, 3 dragons, each of them coming in 2 versions, so 2 different cards. You have the Copper Dragon, of which you have the generic version, and then you have the named version. And it's not, the Copper Dragon is not too big, not too strong, but can move particularly fast, can move up to 5. This is a pretty good movement in this game, and also is particularly agile and hard to hit when it moves fast. So after performing a 4 or 5 maneuver, this dragon rolls +2 defense dice for the remaining of the round. As for the attack, not too strong, but pretty agile. This is a good defensive value. This is a fairly good number of health points that you have. And also, there are some specific abilities that this guy has, such as the Trickster action. You can stop the image here and read if you want to know the entire text. You have another dragon, which is the Blue Dragon. As you can see, it doesn't move as far as the Copper Dragon. Again, generic version and named version. Stronger, more resistant than the Copper Dragon. As you can see, the combat value and the health point values are better, but less agile than the Copper Dragon. Different possible upgrades. And as for the ability of the named version, Zedra rolls +1 attack die and +1 defense die whenever she's in combat at range 3 or 4. And then we have the Red Dragon, which pretty much is the tank of the game. Not nearly as agile as the Copper Dragon, and also less agile than the Blue Dragon. As you can see, for example, the Red Dragon cannot execute this maneuver at range 4, only at range 3, but it's big and scary. 5 attack points, which is the strongest in the core set, 6 health points, which is the most resistant in this set, armor of 2, pretty good. And also, this dragon rolls +1 attack die whenever he attacks a creature who possesses fewer damage cards than he has. That is, if you wound an opponent and the opponent is weaker than you, has been wounded more than you have, then this dragon sees blood, and he really looks the part, and then becomes even more ferocious. Of course, there's also a difference in the number of available actions. As you can see, the Copper Dragon has more available actions than the other ones. It has this action here, which is available, which is the feint, makes it harder to hit and to catch. The Red Dragon has the same number of actions as the Blue Dragons, but it has the charge, which allows him to move further at the end of movement and to have an extra attack die when attacking in melee. So you have only 3 dragons here, but they are substantially different from one another, and they do play in different ways. Creatures in the game are represented by really nice looking miniatures that stay on stands that have a reminder of the basic stats of the creature and also visualization of the arcs of attack. Creatures also have 1 or 2 movement dials. Some creatures may have a ground and a flight movement dial. Some creatures will only have the ground one if they cannot fly. Dragons can choose to fly or to be on the ground. Simply at the end of your movement you can decide if you want to change altitude. If you're flying, you can move to swoop. You get a token that represents that. You don't need to move the creature. When you're swooping, it simply means that you're very close to the ground and you can attack creatures that are on the ground or in the air, but also you can be attacked by both types of creature. If you're flying, you can only be attacked by flying or swooping creatures. If you're on the ground And at the end of movement, if you're a flying creature, you can choose to drop to the ground. You got a marker to indicate that. When you're on the ground, then you can only attack and be attacked by creatures on the ground and swooping creatures. So you pick up the movement dial of the creature that you are moving. If you have multiple creatures, you will have a dial for each, and at the beginning of the turn you select the type of maneuver that you want the creature to perform. So you commit to the maneuver secretly. I want that to move by 3 straight, then I commit to that maneuver, or maybe I want to turn to the right, distance 3, so on and so forth. The standard maneuvers are the white ones. So if you perform a white maneuver, there is no extra effect. If you perform a red maneuver, that's a particularly taxing maneuver for that creature, and it means that after performing that maneuver, you receive an exhaustion token, and when you have an exhaustion token, then you cannot perform another red maneuver, and you cannot perform actions. In order to get rid of the exhaustion token in a following turn, you need to perform a green maneuver. Green maneuvers simply remove the exhaustion tokens because they're particularly easy and relaxing, refreshing, rejuvenating maneuvers. So you select your maneuvers secretly for all the creatures that you have. Then the maneuvers are resolved in order of initiative. You look at the cards, and each creature has a level that is used as initiative. That is, movement is resolved in ascending order of level. Lower levels go first, higher levels go last, and then after you have moved, you can perform one of the actions described on your card, as I showed you earlier. Suppose it is time to resolve the maneuvers, then the player controlling the red dragon shows that he selected that maneuver, which is a short turn to the right. You have a bunch of movement templates that you use to resolve maneuvers. You pick up the appropriate one, it would be this one in this case. You place it by the base in front of your character, then you hold the template and you move the base to the other side until you reach the opposite side of the base. Ta-da! Then suppose it's time to resolve movement for the next creature. That dragon has chosen this maneuver here, which is a tight turn. Then we repeat the procedure. We put the movement template in front of the character in the middle of the base. There's a little slot to help you do that, and then we transfer the creature to the other side of the movement template. Now movement is resolved. After you move one of your creatures, you can perform one of the available actions. I didn't do that, but suppose that when we were moving the red dragon, at the end of movement, the red dragon had decided to perform a dodge. Then we place a dodge marker by that creature to indicate that the creature is performing that action. The copper dragon, we will imagine that the copper dragon decided to concentrate at the end of movement, and then we use that marker to indicate that. After movement has been resolved, and players may have performed actions and possibly change altitude, it is time to resolve attacks. Attacks are resolved in descending order of initiative or level. That is, the characters that move last attack first, and vice versa. In order to attack an opponent, you need to have an opponent in one of your attack arcs, which may be rear or forward. In this case, the two opponents are so close to one another that clearly will be able to attack each other. Otherwise, there is a ruler that you use to determine the range to see if the opponent is, well, within your arc of attack and also within range, and at which range. Because remember that your weapons that you're using have indeed an arc and a range. For example, if I'm trying to bite or to attack with the tail using this dragon, then I can perform that up to distance 2. There are attacks that allow you to perform attacks at better range. For example, breathing fire goes up to 3, things like that. So when you're performing an attack, you pick up a number of red dice equal to your primary attack value. That can be modified by a variety of factors, a number of factors, such as, for example, individual abilities, upgrades. There's a lot of stuff. But the basic idea is that once you have your pool of dice, you roll them, and you see what the results are. We cheat a little to get more interesting results. Now, results. These are standard hits against the opponent. These are critical hits against the opponent. Blank, of course, means a simple miss. The eye usually, the eye symbol is a miss, unless your action was to concentrate and you have this token, you decide to spend it, then each eye symbol that you rolled counts as a hit if you're using it when attacking, and counts as a dodge if you're using the concentrated action when defending, because defense dice also have an eye, which indeed can be a miss or a good thing for you. Once the attacker has attacked and you see the number of hits that have been scored, then the defender gets to roll defense dice. Suppose that the defender rolls 3 in this case, but yeah, I don't think red dragons roll that many. Nah, they roll 1 because they're not that agile. So you roll your defenses. We're hypothetically resolving an attack from the copper to the red dragon. In this case, the red dragon has a dodge. Also, the attacked creature can choose to spend the token from the dodge action to count as a dodge. At that point, you subtract the number of dodge results and any other defensive effect that may come from abilities from the number of attacks. If all the incoming attacks have been dodged, no effect for the attacked. If some attacks go through, then the armor value of the defender may stop them. If attacks still go through because there is too many of them, or it may also be that there are some attacks, such as the critical attacks that penetrate armor. Those other game effects allow you to penetrate armor. So for each hit that was not dodged and penetrates armor, the attacked receives a card from this deck. Normal hits, for normal hits you simply receive a card and you place it by your creature card. So all that matters is simply the number. These 2 cards simply indicate that you lost 2 points because you took 2 regular hits. For each critical hits that goes through your armor and wasn't dodged, you still get a card from this deck, but actually this time you flip it and you also read the text, which gives you an extra penalty because that is a critical hit. Many critical hits also have conditions that will allow you to flip them down to regular hits so that you can remove the extra penalty. But otherwise, for numerical purposes, they still count as regular hits. So in this case, if I have these 4 cards by my character, it means that the character took a total of 4 points of damage. So players in this game keep plotting movement, resolving movement, committing to actions, attacking, defending from attacks, until one of the parties is completely destroyed, and of course the surviving party is the winner. Or if you're playing a specific adventure, a specific scenario, then you repeat the turn procedure until one of the players achieves the victory conditions of the scenario. I'll give you a spoiler about my next video. My next video is going to be about the expansions of D&D Attack Wings, which I played extensively. I played extensively the game, and I played extensively with expansions. I already purchased all of the expansions that are out there, I believe, because I like this system very much. I wanted to tell you this in the intro, but I tried not to keep the suspense up. I really enjoy the system a lot. But I have, to be honest, and to make this review accurate, divide between my enthusiasm for the system and my opinions for the core set, which is what I'm reviewing here, in order to give information in case you're considering purchasing this core set. As a starting point for the D&D Attack Wing system, the core set is excellent. You get more dice, if I remember correctly, than you got in the original Star Wars X-Wing. You got all the templates, the cards are beautiful, the rules are very well laid out. You will not need many of those rules though. For example, you will not need rules about the troops, which are in this rulebook, but there are no troops in this set. Ground rules, I guess you could land your dragons and play a little bit with the altitudes, but there are no ground units here, so actually the rules that regulate interaction between ground units and air units are not going to be all that important here. So what do you have here? If you're willing to invest more, then you have really the first stone of a large building, which is a building that is great to explore and inhabit. It's a great system, I love it. It's a wonderful implementation of the system that I first saw in Star Wars X-Wing. As a game per se, the replay value is not that huge. You have 3 dragons and you can play a couple of adventures. There are some adventures in the rulebook, but it pretty much will feel pretty claustrophobic in a couple of games. You can have a duel against a dragon and a duel against another dragon. You can mix and match and have some duels. 3 dragon fights and maybe 1 dragon with a lot of upgrades versus dragons with no upgrades to kind of keep the points similar. You can experiment a little bit, but there isn't all that much that you can do with these dragons. There isn't a huge variety of abilities that you can mix and match here to customize your dragons. So for the replay value, I believe if you're just looking for a simple tactical game that you can play easily and that is fun to play even at the level of the core set, I think that there are other options out there. Maybe you can just print out a set of rules from one of the many miniature sets of rules out there. Many of those are for print and play. This is why I mentioned the printing out option, and then you can use whatever miniatures you have, and there are some very accessible systems in that sense. Even Wings of War, Wings of Glory, the base set has more options and more things that you can do than you can do with these 3 dragons. These 3 dragons look beautifully, play wonderfully, I love the system, but as a set per se, this is not excellent because you will feel the need to play more. So, and I know some people are really particular about this. They want a starter set that is a full game and then you expand, but this really feels like a tasting event, not a full meal. The system per se is great, but again, to be honest, I can't tell you some of the best things about the system talking about the core set, only because indeed it is in the interaction between land units and ground units and air units that you have a lot of complexity, a lot of depth, a lot of strategy, a lot of wonderful decisions to make, a lot of tight moments between the interaction, in the interaction between units with a double arc or of attacks and other units that only have a forward arc of attack, but you don't have these in this set. Well, in the interaction between such units and the units with 2 arcs of attack, you have again a lot of decisions because the units that only have 1 arc of attack have to make sure that they don't get the enemies on the back, as the enemies can attack from multiple directions. All these things you will not see here, unfortunately. Here you have a simple dog fighting system with dragons, which is cool enough, as is when you have a dragon that breathes fire and then another dragon manages to dodge that, comes around, bites the butt of the aforementioned dragon. Meanwhile, another dragon is like shooting lightning bolts and hitting multiple dragons, because that's what lightning bolts do. It's a line attack. It's fun, crazy stuff. If you like the original system, it is great to have it here, but alas, it does feel like this core set could benefit from more stuff. If you want more stuff, you have to purchase it individually. I love the experience that I had from the core set. All the good stuff that I find that the system are here. The system is intuitive, plays fast, multiple simultaneous selection of action allows the game to move at a good pace. All great things, but what I saw in this game wasn't like great game in the core set, a great system with potential if you're spending more. So that's my point. If you think this is something that you may be interested in trying and expanding, in a sense, if you're maybe interested in committing to, then please by all means go ahead and pick up this set. If you're just looking for a game that feels complete and self-sufficient, this core set may not be the best option for you. In my next video, I'm going to show you some of the expansions that I purchased for the system, and I'm going to be able to, I hope, to elaborate a bit more about the experience of playing D&D Attack Wing, because you really need more stuff than you find in the core set to really get a sense of what the system can do for you.